Okay, well, remember that Hushai had basically given advice to Absalom and Absalom took his advice over Hith, Ahithophel, Ahithophel, who was his advisor. And basically, he was Hushai's plan, or Ahithophel's plan was go in there right away and get him. Okay, go get David. Yeah. And Hushai said, no, spend some time and gather all your army together. Okay, and remember that Hushai is David's secret agent, kind of. He's there to kind of get rid of or kind of get Absalom to go with his plan rather than Ahithophel's plan. And so Hushai he actually convinced Absalom to do what he wanted. And that allowed what? How did that help David?
Time to rest.
Time to
gather together.
Time to get a message to David and have him prepare, for the battle to come. So it gave him that respite. And we ended chapter 17 with 3 people kind of coming and providing support to David. David had time to get over the Jordan River and go to a place called Mahanaim.
Yeah, sure.
Mahanaim. And this Mahanaim was significant because it was a title that was given to that city by Jacob. And it meant 2 hosts or 2 camps. And that's where Jacob had actually encountered a company of angels, okay, while he was returning to Canaan. And so he had 2 hosts or 2 camps, is what the word kind of means. And it was hosted by the angels as well as Jacob. And so and if you take a look, there's a map here that shows this is the Dead Sea, this is Jerusalem here, and the city that David went to was here. It was about 66 miles from Jerusalem, where he escaped from Jerusalem and headed and was able to get to that location. At the same time, we have Absalom moving his troop, or gathering all his people together and moving his troop up to this forest in Gilead, the forest of Ephraim in this area. And so the battle is getting ready to come.
It's interesting that we have conversations currently about aliens and the possibility of other life, and we debate, is that real or not? But we accept that angels were there.
I'm actually jealous because every time I hear about, like, when they had a big question or whatever, an angel came down and talked to them. And I was like, come on, send me one. I'd like something that clear cut, It's just, I think it's awesome.
I don't want to sidetrack us here.
You live with an angel, your dog.
This is
You're just talking about our angels.
I thought they were the voices in my head.
It could very well be.
Oh, no, all 10 of them.
And what happened to Ahithophel? What did he do? He had
didn't he?
his advice had been ignored.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, he went to his house. He went back home. He put his home in order.
Then he killed himself.
And then he killed himself. Right, and he was buried in his father's tomb.
That's interesting because that's very much Eastern. You lose face, and so.
Or Japanese.
Yeah.
The
idea of you've lost your respect. And, was that what he felt, that he was no longer respected, therefore there was no purpose for him? I mean, I just, as Jeff always says, I try to understand the ununderstandable. Like, how can I get into his mind and figure out what he was thinking to have him choose that course?
This is very sad, but I actually had a student at Virginia State who was a football player and an accounting major, and he did quite well in accounting, but he wanted to be a pro football player. And when he was not drafted into the pros, he killed himself. He couldn't imagine doing anything else. So, that kind of mindset, I don't get it either, but it still exists.
Ahithophel had been David's advisor. Now he was Absalom's advisor. And now Absalom wasn't paying attention to it. He couldn't go back to David. He couldn't go, where is he going to go? What is he going to do?
What's his purpose?
What's his purpose?
Lost his power.
And I think the last passages that you were reading last week had at the end of 7, all of these names. It was just going back and forth with name after name. And
Thank goodness for Mrs. Smith in the first grade.
but when David went to Mahanaim, then his nephew Joab was the leader of his army. Okay. When Absalom crossed the Jordan and took his men into Gilead, Amasa was his commander, and Amasa was Joab's brother and David's nephew. So we got nephews of David on both sides. Can you imagine that those brothers, one of them being for David and one of them, it's like Civil War,
Yeah.
And
Like a clan family feud.
And remember what was it? Nathan, the prophet, was saying, your family will just be,
Split asunder.
split. Right, right. So we see all of these divisions occurring. But David was greeted with, and we kind of ended last chapter with 17 with the three loyal supporters providing food and supplies, and it went on and on, honey and sheep and pottery and all of this stuff, because David had been 66 miles from Jerusalem going up to Mahanaim, and they were probably worn completely out, and so all of these 3 advisors, and it mentioned those 3 advisors. 2 of them were like they weren't from Israel. They were from. It says Shobi was the son of Nahish from Rabbah of the Ammonites. You remember Ammonites?
Are those supposed to be bad?
That right. As an Ammonite prince, likely the brother to King Hanun, whose assistance had provided David assistance. And then we had, he was an Ammonite, and then he represents an unexpected ally in the time of crisis. And then Machir of Lodabar, and he was son of Amiel, wealthy and influential man from Lodabar who supports King David during Absalom's revolt. And he had previously taken care of Saul's grandson, Mehilbus, in his home before David brought him to Jerusalem. And then Barzillai, Gileadite. Yeah. Okay. And he was very wealthy and elderly, 80 years old. We'll hear about him a little bit later. As a wealthy leader, he supported David when others were turning to Absalom. So we have 3 loyal supporters bringing and supporting David with basically all of the supplies he needed to get ready.
I was going to say that's probably difficult for Barzillai, since Absalom was camped near Gilead or in Gilead, right? Isn't that where the forests up there? But then that where Absalom took his troops, didn't you tell us that David was in here and Absalom was up?
Well, they were heading
That
way,
way.
and
Okay,
heading that
I
way,
see.
but remember, he still was, they got those supplies to David as soon as he got
Okay.
there, and they were still kind of giving David some time by gathering all the troops and getting ready to go up there,
Okay.
so. But I'm sure, that there are difficulties. So we come to our psalm for the day.
All right.
Okay. Thought I'd forgotten the song. Psalm 28, and some scholars attribute it to an unknown author, but it seems reasonable to credit David for the authorship. The psalm indicates the author was in a dangerous situation, which David is right now, getting ready. His enemies were oppressing him, but he trusted in the Lord to deliver him. And so the psalm kind of has 3 to 4 sections. It starts out with a plea asking to be heard by God. So the first 2 verses are, "To you, Lord, I call, you are my rock. Do not turn a deaf ear to me, for if I remain silent, I will be like those who go down to the pit. Hear my cry for mercy as I call to you for help, as I lift up my hands toward your most holy place." Then it kind of changes into a warning, asking to be spared from the wicked. "Do not drag me away with the wicked, with those who do evil, who speak cordially with their neighbors, but harbor malice in their hearts. Repay them for their deeds and for their evil work. Repay them for what their hands have done, and bring back on them what they deserve, because they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord and what his hands have done. He will tear them down and never build them up again." Sounds like he wants, hey, God, revenge.
Yeah.
And then it turns to praise. "Praise be to the Lord, for he has heard my cry for mercy." He's answering my prayers. "The Lord is my strength and my shield." And think about a shield, what a shield means to a person like David, who has been in battle. "My heart trusts in him and helps me. My heart leaps for joy, and with my song I praise him." So God is his protector. He's giving strength to the people. And then it ends with, "The Lord is the strength of his people and fortress of salvation for his anointed one." Now, who is the anointed one in David's time? David. Okay. It's been compared with the anointed one in the Christian time represents Christ. Okay. "Save your people and bless your inheritance. Be their shepherd and carry them forever." So David was a shepherd, and how he protected his flock with the bears and the lions, and so be our shepherd. So God is their shepherd. So that kind of prepares us to get into the next chapter where David is
Kind of interesting.
ready to go to battle.
The comparison of David being actually a shepherd. Christ metaphorically being a shepherd, but he was actually a carpenter. So it's kind of weird.
Okay, so we start with chapter 18. If someone, well, Sarah, would you like to read 1 through 8?
She liked that. So.
I wish I had the option.
And David marshaled the troops that were with him, and set over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. And David sent out the troops, a third under Joab, and a third under Abishai, son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the troops, "I too will surely sally forth with you." And the troops said, "You shall not sally forth, for if we must flee, they will pay us no mind. And should half of us die, they will pay us no mind. For you are like 10,000 of us, and so it is better that you be a help for us from the town." And the king said to them, "Whatever is good in your eyes, I shall do." And the king stood by the gate, and all the troops sallied forth by their hundreds and their thousands. And the king charged Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for me with the lad Absalom. And all the troops heard when the king charged the commanders concerning Absalom. And the troops sallied forth to the field to meet Israel. And the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. And the troops of Israel were routed there by David's servants. And great was the slaughter there, 20,000. And the battle spread out all over the countryside, and the forest devoured more of the troops than the sword devoured on that day.
So David doesn't just send all of his troops together as a force. He divides them into three. He's got a much smaller group than Absalom does. So he divides them, and David is kind of a guerrilla fighter, okay? And he wants to fight in a forest, okay? Because he'll have an upper hand in a forest. And so he divides them up between Joab, his nephew, and Joab's brother, another brother. Yeah, right. And then Ittai, who is from Gath. And remember who else was from Gath?
Goliath.
Yes, Goliath was from Gath. So Philistine.
Right.
Okay. So someone from the outside. Okay.
So David really built some alliances during that time that, he was running from Saul and hanging out with all the enemies.
Right. And he divided them in his army into 3 units and sent those units out. And it was more suited for what Kirsch is saying, for a hit and run kind of attacks, on Absalom's group. But how many people were killed? 20,000 or a lot.
Yeah.
And the forest took more people than
The
sword.
the forest took more people than the sword.
Yes.
Does that mean they ran away then?
It might have been some of that desertion. It could have been that just fighting in the forest. Can you imagine?
You're not used to that. You get lost.
You get lost or fall in pits. There were pits. We know there's a pit.
How long did this battle go on? Was this one day or a long period?
I don't.
Because what I'm thinking is one thing in the forest, if they're foraging and eating things, they might not know enough to eat mushrooms.
Yeah.
God knows what.
It says the smaller units that David broke into are easier to move through the forest than a large group. They get broken up. They get lost. With a larger group.
Well, also, what's the place we went at? The battlefield here. We went in the night. Cold Harbor. That I think in one afternoon, 10,000 people were killed, something like that. And these guys were laying in trenches for a long time and having dysentery and one thing and another, so it could be related to all that.
But also, I'm sure they didn't have uniforms. So how do you know? You have a bunch of people in the forest running at each other. How do you know who's on what side?
I don't know. They must have had some way of identifying.
Yeah.
It matters just which way you're coming from.
But what was David's
Yeah.
only order to these people?
Deal gently with them.
Yes, deal gently with Absalom. Let's see what happens next.
That didn't go well.
Okay, if someone could read 9 through 18.
I can do it. Okay. Now some of David's men caught sight of Absalom. He was riding a mule, and as it passed beneath a great oak, his head was caught in its boughs. He found himself in midair, and the mule went out from under him. One of the men who saw it went and told Joab, I saw Absalom hanging from an oak. While the man was telling him, Joab broke in. You saw him? Why did you not strike him to the ground then and there? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. The man answered, If you were to put in my hands 1,000 pieces of silver, I would not lift a finger against the king's son. For we all heard the king giving orders to you and to Abishai and Ittai, that whoever finds himself near the young man Absalom must take great care of him. If I had dealt him a treacherous blow, the king soon would have known, and you would have kept well out of it. That is a lie, said Joab. I will make a start and show you. So he picked up 3 stout sticks and drove them against Absalom's chest while he held fast in the tree, and still alive. Then 10 young men who were Joab's armor bearers closed in on Absalom, struck at him, and killed him. Joab sounded the trumpet, and the army came back from the pursuit of Israel because he had called it off. They took Absalom's body and flung it into a great pit in the forest and raised over it a huge pile of stones. The Israelites all fled to their homes. The pillar in the king's vale had been set up by Absalom in his lifetime, for he said, I have no son to carry on my name. He had named the pillar after himself, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument.
So it says, Kirsch was saying, this is the guy who refused to kill Absalom when he found him hanging in the tree is probably one of the smartest guys in the story. He knew what David had done before when someone killed, someone that might be become the anointed or whatever. So, but Joab he had some balls. He just went ahead and did it. He knew that as long as Absalom was alive, that he was a threat to David. And so he went in.
Now, there are times that Joab was he killed somebody, stabbed, he went, killing people in the abdomen and stuff. And
oh yeah.
He went for vengeance when his brother was killed, all that. So,
right. And here it says the heart. That he stabbed him in the heart. He first, when he heard about Absalom hanging in the tree, and some people say metaphorically between heaven and earth, okay, that he got 10 men with him, okay, and went there, and that he stabbed him in the heart, and then he said, stabbing someone in the heart is going to kill you, but then he had the other 10 men were finishing the job. And going, and all of them were stabbing him. Why do you think?
So that nobody can say I killed.
That one man killed him. Yeah. Okay. And he had all of these people, all of these injuries, and they couldn't blame it on any one person. David couldn't pick one person and say, you're the one that's gonna get it.
Well, but then he just wipes out all 10.
Yeah, I was saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe 12 Baker's dozen, who knows,
Right. And I was looking up, how long was Absalom's hair? Because he'd only cut it once a year, remember? And it said there was at one point, how long he used 3 darts hanging by his hair, very much alive. He was, it was around 5 pounds of hair, estimated. And he was someone had offered he wouldn't take the man who found him wouldn't take 5 shekels or 25 shekels. He wouldn't take any 25 pounds. He wouldn't take anything, to do that. But the writer does pause kind of at the end and say a note that Absalom left no son to keep his name in remembrance. Okay, and he ends up a signal that Absalom's claim on the kingship ended, with his death. Didn't have anyone to pass that on to.
Yeah, he is remembered. Absalom is quite a remembrance and lots of literary allusions to Absalom.
Meaning someone who betrays their father, or
In fact, Faulkner's Absalom is about The trains.
Okay, so, the next section, if someone could read 19 through 33. A little bit longer.
I'll try to take it.
Oh,
Okay.
we love your Bible.
Okay. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said to Joab, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord has saved him from his enemies." "No," Joab said, "today you will not take any good news. Some other day you may do so, but not today, for the king's son is dead." Then he said to his Ethiopian slave, "Go and tell the king what you have seen." The slave bowed and ran off. Ahimaaz insisted, "I don't care what happens. Please let me take the news also." "Why do you want to do it, my son?" Joab asked. "You will get no reward for it." "Whatever happens," Ahimaaz said again, "I want to go." "Then go, Joab." So Ahimaaz ran off down the road through the Jordan Valley, and soon he passed the slave. David was sitting in a space between the inner and outer gates of the city. The lookout went up to the top of the wall and stood on the roof of the gateway. He looked out and he saw a man running alone. He called down and told the king, and the king said, "If he is alone, he is bringing good news." The runner kept coming closer. Then the lookout saw another man running alone, and he called down to the gatekeeper, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, there's another man running." The king answered, "This one is also bringing good news." The lookout said, "I can see that the first man looks like Ahimaaz." "He is a good man," the king said, "and he is bringing good news." Ahimaaz called out a greeting to the king, threw himself down on the ground before him, and said, "Praise the Lord your God, who has given you victory over the men and who rebelled against your majesty." "Is this young man Absalom all right?" the king asked. Ahimaaz answered, "Sir, when your officer Joab sent me, I saw a great commotion, but I could not tell what it was." "Stand over there," the king told him, and he went over and stood there. Then the Ethiopian slave arrived and said to the king, "I have good news for your majesty. Today the Lord has given you victory over all who rebelled against you." "Is the young man Absalom all right?" the king asked. The slave answered, "I wish that what has happened to him would happen to all your enemies, sir, and to all who rebel against you now." The king was overcome with grief. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he cried, "Oh, my son Absalom, Absalom, my son, if only I had died in your place, my son, Absalom, my son." So, how's that go with everybody else's version?
No, good. I think they called the Ethiopian Cushite in
Cushite, yeah.
in my version. But
He was just an old slave.
Yeah.
but Hamas, the son of Zadok was the high priest. So he had been one of the messengers to take the message, and then had hidden in the well and taken the message. And so he loved to run, didn't he?
Yeah.
People were familiar with him taking messages because he just had to go, even though they wanted to send, the Cushite. And so he ran the Cushites. Says, let me run.
Well, if it had been a Kenyan slave, he would have ran faster. He's the fastest.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Barefoot at that.
Yeah.
He was a loyal supporter and acted as a spy again. And he just insisted on bringing news of the victory. But when he told David about it, he says, "I don't know what happened to Absalom," basically. He didn't want to break the bad news. Cushite had no problem saying, "May this same thing that happened to all of your enemies that happened to this guy," and David knew, that his son was dead. So the only news that David was really interested in here this battle, all of these men had gone out and fought for him. And now he is just interested in knowing if his enemy, who's caused this whole problem, was alive. One of his many sons, but his next in line, his heir was alive. So let's read 19, getting into 19, unless there's any other thought about that. 19, 1 through 8.
Then it was told Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourns for Absalom. The victory that day was turned to mourning for all the people, for the people heard it said that day, the king is grieved for his son. So the people went by stealth into the city that day, as people who are humiliated steal away when they flee in battle. The king covered his face and cried out with a loud voice, "Oh, my son Absalom, oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, Today you are covered with shame. Today you have covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who today have saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives and the lives of your concubines, by loving those who hate you and by hating those who love you. For you have shown today that princes and servants are nothing to you. For I know this day that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now, therefore, arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, surely not a man will pass the night with you, and this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now. So the king arose and sat in the gate. When they told all the people, saying, Behold, the king is sitting in the great gate, then all the people came before the king. Now, how far am I supposed to go? 11?
No, just through 8.
8. Now, Israel had fled, each to his tent.
And this is the second time that sentence appears. It says, meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes. It was also earlier on. They had said the same thing. Israelites had fled to their homes.
Back in Israel.
Joab was really mad, and rightfully so. Okay, here he had been out there, and his brother, fighting in the forest to save David's reign. And here it said, one of the sentences here, it said, the king is weeping. The whole army, it was mourning for the people. Where they would normally have come back into the town victorious, they were sneaking back into town. Because they were ashamed, having shame, because the king is in mourning. And here Joab, the commander, comes and he really lays it on the line with David. He's not afraid of David. He remembers when David was a little shepherd boy playing a harp, and I really love this section where he's really kind of cussing him out, for what he's done. He says, you go out there and you get at that city gate right now, and make these people, show these people, how proud you are of them, because the whole city was in mourning. So he orders David, the king, to go out. So who has the power here?
Looks like Joab.
Right. The victorious soldiers slipped back into the city as if they were cowards. And then remember, when they saw the runners coming, they saw one runner, and says, that's good news. Why is that good news? Because if you see a lot of people running, what does that mean? Retreat to the city to have protection. So he saw one runner, and then the second runner that they did see running, they recognized him. So they knew that it was going to be good news, but David treated it like it was the worst news. And Joab saying, you would have been happy if if Absalom had been the live one and we had all died, that's what it
And
sounds
especially
like.
since Absalom, the reason Absalom had to flee in the first place. I mean, wasn't that the whole with the sister issue?
Right,
Oh,
right, because he killed Amnon,
yeah,
Yeah.
who was the one who raped Tamar.
but then when he finally came back, he
And David was
immediately-
mad at Absalom
right.
for that, so Absalom was, first he went and lived with his father-in-law for 3 years in a
Right.
different country, and then came back, and he and David let him come back to Jerusalem, but they didn't talk to each other for 4 years.
But-
And
see,
then
but this
Absalom
makes no sense.
decided to take over the country.
Yeah, but if Absalom knows he's next in line and David is welcoming him, why not just sit and chill? You're next in line.
Lack of patience.
He wasn't patient, Howard.
And a lot of Israel was supporting Absalom.
Yeah, Absalom went to the city gate, remember? And everyone that came in to the city, he said, you're not gonna get your problem resolved by going to the king. If you come to me, I'll
I'm
do
the
it.
one that,
So he was wanting to, one, get back at David probably because of what David had done, David's role in his sister. So he really loved his sister, or revenge became the most important thing, at that point, that someone had did him wrong, maybe not his sister, but did wrong to him.
When you look at Watergate and think of all the deception and the trickery and the lying and the cover up that went into that, just so he could be elected for another 4 years. I mean, he wanted the power. And Absalom couldn't wait another minute. I want it now.
it's a story that repeats itself.
Oh, all
throughout
the
history.
Still.
You look at the European one.
Yeah.
Okay, so ta-da, David won. Okay, and he is again, he won over Absalom, but he's still in retreat in Mahanaim. Okay, and we're having to deal with, how's he going to be put back on the throne? So, if someone could read 9 through 15.
All the people were disputing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, King delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled out of the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing the king back? King David sent this message to the priests Zadok and Abiathar. Say to the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his house? The talk of all Israel has come to the king. You are my kin. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? So may God do to me and more if you are not commander of my army from now on in the place of Joab. Amasa swayed the hearts of all the people of Judah as one, and they sent word to the king. Return both you and all your servants. So the king came back to the Jordan, and Judah came to the Gilgal to meet the king, to bring him over the Jordan. Shemaiah,
Okay, we can
there.
stop.
All right.
Stop there. He offered Amasa the command of his army.
So what happened to Joab?
Yeah.
Joab's gonna get
Amasa was his nephew that was working for Absalom.
That's right. But pretty shrewd political maneuver to put him in charge of the armies because he's won his allegiance now. And he's let Joab know, okay, I'm out here at the gate. I'm gonna be king again. But
But-
you did what I asked you not to do. I asked you to be gentle with them. Absalom.
Right.
And I know you didn't.
So there was no king ruling in Jerusalem. All of Israel was saying, hey, why aren't
Because
you
he's
all
on the
asking?
other side of the Jordan River.
Yeah, he's on the
Yeah.
other side of the Jordan, you remember, and 66 miles away. Okay, and there's no one's there, and all these Israelites are asking for him to be put back on the throne or return to Jerusalem, but all the people in Jerusalem, which are his kin, you know, all of his relatives and everything, are the last ones. You know, they haven't asked yet, and so he sends word, you know, by the priest to let them know, hey, you are flesh of my flesh. Why are you the last ones to ask me to come back? And so he says Amasa, and Amasa, it said, won over their hearts of the men of Judah. Okay, and they called and were going up to get David to bring him back to Jerusalem. Here. And then the next section is fairly long to read, so maybe. Will you
Start
read
there.
it?
Or I can
If you
start
read
there.
like 16 through 40.
Then Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down from the men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, with Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him, and they rushed to the Jordan before the king. Then they kept crossing the ford to bring over the king's household and to do what was good in his sight. And Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to cross the Jordan. So he said to the king, Let my lord consider me guilty, nor remember what your servant did wrong on the day when my lord the king came out from Jerusalem.
Remember, he was the one cussing him.
So that the king would take it to heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come today, the first of all the house of Joseph, to go down and meet my lord the king. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said, Should not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? David then said, What have I to do with you, O sons of Zeruiah, that you should this day be an adversary to me? Should any man be put to death in Israel today? Or do I not know that I am king over Israel today? The king said to Shimei, You shall not die. Thus the king swore to him. Then the son of Saul came down to meet the king, and he had neither cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came home in peace. It was when he came from Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, Why did you not go with me, Babasheth? And he answered, O my lord the king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself that I may ride on it and go with the king, because your servant is lame. Moreover, he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your sight. All my father's household was nothing but dead men for my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who ate at your own table. What right do I have yet that I should complain any more to the king? So the king said to him, Why do you still speak of your affairs? I have decided you and Ziba shall divide the land. Mephibosheth said to the king, Let him even take it all, since my lord the king has come safely to his own house. Now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, and he went on to the Jordan with the king to escort him over the Jordan. Now Barzillai was very old, being 80 years old, and he had sustained the king while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. The king said to Barzillai, You cross over with me, and I will sustain you in Jerusalem with me. But Barzillai said to the king, How long have I yet to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am now 80 years old. Can I distinguish between good and bad? Or can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Or can I hear any more the voice of singing men and women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant would merely cross over Jordan with the king. Why should the king compensate me with this reward? Please let your servant return that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and my mother. However, here is your servant Chimham.
His son.
So,
It was gonna be, it's,
Okay.
Priscilla's son.
Servant.
I got servant in mind too.
Yeah. But it is his son.
Okay.
It's his son.
Let him cross over with my lord the king and do for him what is good in your sight. The king answered, Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what is good in your sight, and whatever you require of me, I will do for you. All the people crossed over the Jordan, and the king crossed too. The king then kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his place. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went with him, and all the people of Judah, and also half the people of Israel accompanied the king. And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why had our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household and all David's men with him over the Jordan? Then all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is a close relative of us. Why then are you angry about this matter? Have we eaten at all in the king's expense, or has anything been taken for us? But the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 parts in the king. Therefore, we also have more claim on David than you. Why then did you treat us with contempt? Was it not our advice first to bring back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were harsher than the words of the men of Israel.
So get ready.
my last sentence says, but the men of Judah were more violent in making their claims than the men of Israel.
Yeah.
We're gonna get ready for another war.
Oh,
boy.
Right. But
But there's a pattern of David taking in his enemies
Mhm.
and taking.
Right. Here he is.
Israel was like, we had it.
You know,
A little bit of Italian mafia.
First we have Shammai, who was the one cursing him, who came and said, I'm gonna bow down to you now, forgive me, and he's forgiven. And then we have, remember, Ziba had brought the supplies to David,
He had defected from.
and the cripple
Saul's
boy,
grandson or
right?
whatever.
Well, the
Yeah.
cripple boy says, I didn't even eat or sleep or clean myself up or anything while you were gone. And Ziba had been a traitor and told you that I couldn't come because I was crippled, I couldn't follow you, and so he divides up the land between them.
When I have hippies when they get mad at each other.